Welcome to this video class on how to write an abstract. In this video class, we'll study how to do the PEC, the Prueba de Evaluación Continua, for the module Research Methods in Literary and Cultural Studies. My name is Isabel Guerrero, and together with Cristina Garrigós, I'm one of the teachers of this module from the Máster Universitario en Estudios Literarios y Culturales Ingleses y su Proyección Social. This video class is divided into 3 parts. In the first part, I'll provide some general guidelines on how to write an abstract. Then we'll see some examples of abstracts from the field of Arts and Humanities. And then we'll see together some documents that you have available in the platform enough that will help you to do the PEC. We'll have a look at the instructions for the PEC, and then we'll have a look as well to the correction guidelines. Okay, so let's see together first the part 1, how to write an abstract, general guidelines. The first question that we usually pose before writing an abstract is obviously, what is an abstract? An abstract is a summary of your work. It provides some information on the content and the scope of your work. In a sense, we can say that an abstract replaces the whole work, as by reading the abstract, the reader should have a quite clear and concise idea of what your work is going to be about. This means that an abstract is not, first, an introduction to your work, and second, an explanation of what you did or what you are going to do. As I said, an abstract is actually a summary of your work. All the information that you include in your abstract is already included in your work, or is going to be included in your work when you write it. When do we have to write an abstract? Okay, the answer to this is that we write abstracts for different situations. We write abstracts for conferences, for publications, and also we'll usually have to accompany our master thesis or our PhD thesis with an abstract. Sometimes we are required to write an abstract before we actually write our work. That's usually the case in conferences. For instance, for a conference, when you apply to go to a conference, the organizers often ask you to submit an abstract. And when you write this abstract, it's usually before you've written the actual paper. That means that if you get accepted in the conference, you will use that abstract as a guide to write your paper. However, when you write an abstract for a publication, for an article in a journal, or for a chapter in a book, or when you write it for your master thesis or for your PhD thesis, often what you do is to finish your work first and then write your abstract. However, you can also use another technique, and it's write the abstract beforehand and then use it as a guide to know the structure of your work, and also to state what the main points are going to be and what you're going to include in your work. And then when you finish your work and you have to submit your article or your thesis, you can revise that abstract and do your definitive abstract. And this question is obviously linked to the question of where do we find abstracts? We find abstracts in conference programs. When we go to a conference, we usually have a book of abstracts, and in that book of abstracts, we can find all the information about the different panels and the different posters maybe that are going to appear in the conference, and then we can go through this book of abstract and decide which conferences we want to attend. We also find abstracts in internet databases, and also obviously in publications, and they will give us a first general overview on the topic of the paper. And that's very useful sometimes when we are researching for a specific article and we find a bunch of articles that are probably going to be useful for our research, but we are not sure about it. And then we'll just go through the abstract and decide whether it is relevant for work, and then we'll move to read the complete thing. And also, obviously, in PhD or master thesis, at the beginning or at the end, they are accompanied by an abstract. Very important for our purposes today is the question of how long is an abstract. An abstract is typically between 150 and 500 words. However, sometimes when you are asked to submit an abstract for a journal, for instance, they ask you to write a shorter abstract, one of 100 words. And sometimes you might be required to write a longer abstract, one that is usually called an extended abstract of 600 words, 700 words. Often when we have to write this type of extended abstract is when we want to send a proposal for a chapter in an edited book, or a proposal for an article in an edited volume of a journal, for instance. But as I said, the typical length is 150 and 500 words. This is more or less the typical size of an abstract. Okay, so what should my abstract include? And here we're going to have a look at two main things. First, we'll see some details about the presentation of our abstract, and then we'll move to the structure. Regarding the presentation, this is how the top of your abstract will look like. Imagine that this blue square is a page, okay? So at the top, in one corner, you'll label abstract. Then you'll leave two blank lines and you'll write your title. Remember that a good title, needs to be concise and clear, okay? After the title, you include your name, and then usually you'll be asked to include your institutional affiliation, okay? And you can write that also there. Okay, let's see now the structure. First of all, if you are familiar with abstracts, with writing abstracts in other disciplines, you need to bear in mind that the structure in Arts and Humanities, and especially in culture and literary studies, is quite flexible, okay? So basically here we're going to have a structure of introduction, body, and conclusions. And the sections that they include inside these main sections can be quite different sometimes. It's a flexible structure, as I mentioned. First, in the introduction, we are going to include some essential background information. Then we are going to state the purpose of our work. It's very important, of course, to explain the reader what the purpose of our work is, what's the main aim of what we are doing. And then we'll also typically include the thesis statement here. The thesis statement is going to be linked to the research question. It's going to be linked to the main research question of our work. This means that the whole information in the abstract is going to be organized by this research question, and is going to be related and is going to be relevant to this research question, okay? So if something is not really relevant to it, maybe you should wonder whether it should be in the abstract or you can delete it. Then in the development section, usually we'll find some explanation on the methods or in the sections of the work. If, imagine you are writing an abstract for your MA thesis, and your MA thesis has, let's say, 4 chapters, then in the development section of your abstract, you'll devote 1 sentence for each chapter to explain each chapter, not more than 1 sentence, because remember that an abstract has to be very concise and it has a very limited word count, okay? Sometimes, and we are going to see this when we're focusing on the examples, in the development section, we can also find the thesis statement, okay? As I said before, it's a flexible structure. And then we'll have some conclusions or results, usually 1, 2 sentences, maybe 3, dealing with this. And last of all, we'll find as well, together with the abstract, some keywords, okay? From 3 to 5 keywords, depending on the requirements. When you submit an abstract to a journal, an edited book collection, or wherever, they will tell you how many keywords you have to write. And we'll see some more characteristics on the keywords later on. Okay, so when we start writing our first abstract, we sometimes wonder whether we need to write 1 or several paragraphs. The answer is more or less quite clear. An abstract is usually just a single, unified, and coherent paragraph, including the 3 sections that we've already seen: introduction, body, and conclusions, okay? Nevertheless, for longer abstracts, you can include up to 3 paragraphs. And what we'll do then is that in each paragraph, we'll write 1 section. Okay, so in the first paragraph, we'll write the introduction. In the second paragraph, we'll write the body of our abstract. And then we'll use the third paragraph for conclusions and results. My advice is that when you write a short abstract of, well, not short, but a medium-sized abstract, let's say, of 350 words, you keep it to one single one single paragraph, okay? However, if you're writing a longer abstract, one of 500 words or so, then you can do this division. But usually, sticking to the single paragraph is very, very useful. Okay, so what are the qualities of a good abstract? What do we have to check when we write our abstract if we've done well, okay? So first of all, we have to make sure that our abstract is coherent and unified and is only one paragraph, as I was saying, or a maximum of 3 paragraphs. We have to make sure that it's concise and to the point, and that it has a well-developed structure. Also, and this is very, very important, we need to bear in mind that our abstract cannot add new information. All the information that is in the abstract, it should be already in the work, okay? Remember that an abstract is by definition a summary of our work. Okay, what about the keywords? What makes good keywords? Let's see now. Basically, the keywords are considered useful and efficient if they clearly identify the topic or topics of your work. Okay, so the main topics of the work are going to be included in the keywords. They are single words, for instance, literature could be a keyword, or short word phrases, for instance, post-colonial literature. Obviously, make sure that you use and that you choose very concise, very precise terms. Post-colonial literature is more precise than just literature, okay? And remember that the keywords are going to label your work, are going to label your paper, and they are going to be used by the reader, by the editors, and also by search and research engines to classify and categorize your work, okay? So basically, when we write the keywords, we have to bear in mind that they are usually words and concepts that appear in the title or in the abstract itself, and they need to be concise and highly relevant to your work. We'll see more about the keywords when we analyze some examples, okay? So before moving on to the next section, just remember when you write your abstract, please, just remember first to keep contextual information to the minimum, and also to avoid quotes. You don't need to include long quotes in the abstract. The paper is the place for quoting. Here it's better to paraphrase and provide just the basic ideas that you will need and that you're going to develop in your paper. You can, of course, include references, but if you do so, my advice is that you just give the surname of the author you are referring to and the year of the publication, okay? Obviously, if you are referring to an idea that appears in a specific page of the work of this author, you need to follow MLA and also include the page number. But basically, if you are just speaking about an idea that some author is including in his work, in his or her work, you just provide the surname and the year of the publication, and that's more than enough, okay? So let's see now part 2, abstract examples. The first example that I want to show you today is by Cristina Garrigos. It's an abstract from an actual paper titled Warriors and Mystics, Religious Iconography, Eroticism, Blasphemy, and Gender in Punk Female Artists. Here you have the whole abstract and also the keywords at the bottom. You can pause now the video if you want and read through it, and then we'll move to analyze the different sections in this abstract. Okay, so at the beginning of the abstract, we have the introduction. First of all, the author introduces the purpose of your work, and you can see how she uses the words. This paper discusses this expression. She uses this expression to introduce the abstract. Then she provides some background information, and she also includes here the thesis statement. You can see here the thesis statement in blue, okay? So basically, we have the purpose of the work, the background information, and then the thesis statement there. Okay, next, she continues with the development of the work. She gives more information on what she's going to later tell in the work, in the actual article. And just at the end of the abstract, she uses just one sentence to provide us with some of the results that she finds in her research. Okay, let's have a look now to the keywords. At At the top, you have the 4 keywords that this author has chosen. They are punk, religion, blasphemy, and neuroticism. And you can see how 3 of those words are actually in the title itself, eroticism, blasphemy, and punk. Then we have a word that has varied. We have religion, the noun, in the keywords, and we have the adjective religious in the title. So by just looking at the title itself, we can see the relevance of these keywords. And if we move to the abstract itself, we can see how these words, the keywords, appear all the time in the text. Okay, so as I said, they are relevant words that are easily used to categorize and classify the work, and they highlight the main topics of the work. Okay, let's move to another example. This time we are looking at an article by Remedios Perni titled Ana and Mia, Ophelia on the Web. Here again you have the abstract and then the keywords at the bottom of the screen. And just as a voluntary interactive activity, I invite you to pause the video now, have a look at this text, have a look at this abstract, and try to find out the different sections, okay? Try to find out where is the introduction, where is the development, and what are the results, okay? And try to figure out what do they tell the reader, okay? What each section does, basically. Okay, I hope you've done that already, and we're going to do that now together. In the first 2 sentences, we find the introduction. Actually, the writer uses this expression, this studied this with, to introduce the purpose of the work, and then she provides us with some background information on the topic. Later, we have the development, and this abstract is very interesting because in the development, the author introduces the methodological approach that she is going to use. And you can see how she uses expressions such as, in order to understand blah, 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 this essay employs the idea of, and then she gives us some of the theoretical insights that are going to be used in her paper. And then also in the development section, we find the thesis statement. Okay, so as I was saying before, this structure is quite flexible. Sometimes we find the thesis statement in the introduction, and sometimes we might find it in the development section, for instance, as it happens here. And then we have one last sentence with the results. And again, the author uses an expression to introduce the results. She says, as this essay demonstrates, and she gives us some of the results of her paper. Okay, let's have a look at the keywords. We find here 5 keywords, 4 keywords. And again, we have 2 of those in the title. Ophelia, it's in the keywords, it's in the title. We have digital culture in the title, and then we find web in the title, okay? And later on in the text itself, in the abstract itself, we see how we find William Shakespeare, we find anorexia and bulimia, and we find virtual spaces, which is linked again to digital culture, okay? So there is always this direct connection between keywords and the title and the text itself. Okay, let's finish now with a look of the documents that you have enough to prepare your PEC. If you go to the platform, you'll find that in Unit 3, you have a document titled How to Write an Abstract that is quite useful to read it and use some of the tools that appear there to write your abstract for the PEC. Okay, actually some of the information of this video is taken from that document. Then in the section General Information and Resources, you have the specific instructions for the PEC and also the Rubrica de Corrección, that are some guidelines of the correction that the teaching team are going to use in order to evaluate and give you feedback on your PEC. And we are going to have a brief look to these 2 documents before we finish. Okay, in the PEC instructions, you are going to find a variety of topics that you can use to write your abstract. Also, you'll find the deadline, obviously, to submit the PEC. Also, a reminder about the need to submit original work. And when we speak about original work, We, of course, mean that you cannot plagiarize, you cannot copy-paste an abstract from the internet and submit it. Obviously, you have to be the author of your text. And also, we refer to the fact that self-recycling is not allowed. What I mean is that you cannot submit an abstract that you've already submitted to other subject. Okay, so please make sure that it's an original and new abstract, the one that you are submitting for this module. And also, you'll find some instructions on the format. Okay, you'll find that your abstract is supposed to have between 300 and 350 words. You need to follow the MLA formatting. You need to write it using a Times New Roman with 12-point font, okay, and leave 1-inch margins. Basically, 1 inch corresponds to 2.50 centimeters, okay, so it's the standard configuration for a written document in your computer. Lastly, the correction guidelines are under the title of Rúbrica Corrección PEC in the Aula Virtual, in the platform in ALF, and you'll find this grid, okay? This grid with different elements, different items, with different numbers on them. As you can see, the maximum of punctuation is 10, and we'll use this to give you feedback and to assess how your abstract has been done. My advice is that you have a look at this. Above all, you have a look at the top one, okay, the top elements, because they are the maximum, the best characteristics. They describe the best characteristics that your abstract can have in order to achieve the highest mark, okay? So you have a look at this, you write your abstract, and then when you finish your abstract, you go back to it, and you use this to check whether you comply with these instructions or not. And have a look at the elements that we are going to bear in mind when we evaluate your abstract. We'll have a look at the word count and format. We'll have a look at the research question, whether your abstract includes a research question and a thesis statement or not. We'll also have a look at the methodological framework, the structure, language use, and keywords. And it's important that you bear in mind that we'll have a look at the methodological framework. As we've seen before, not all abstracts include the methodological framework, but as this is one of your first abstracts, we think that you should include it, okay? So you make that effort to put into words what are the main ideas, the main tenets that are going to appear in your work, okay? And here you have some of the sources that we've used for this video class, and you can also find some further reading in order to continue exploring how to do an abstract. Thank you for your attention.